Hello, hello. Hola, Dali. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Dali is the reason, everyone, that I am now the co host of the Miss Texas show. So I'm super happy to have her here and have her for my first interview. So this is very, very near and dear to my heart because of that. And so, with that, before I give Dali a chance to introduce herself, I want to let you all know a little bit about the Miss Texas show. And welcome to everyone that is watching. This is an opportunity for us to showcase life in Texas and beyond, where we highlight amazing survivors of traumatic events, family violence, sex trafficking, sexual abuse, and also community leaders who share community resources. Under our segment called Military Time, we invite military and veterans who would also like to share with us their experiences during and after their military service. We run this segment in partnership with the National Veterans Chamber of Commerce. We would like to invite those who have overcome traumatic events and would like to share and are now ready to help others. Under our Beauty for Ashes segment, we invite fellow pageant sisters, winners, and nominees, artists. So, this is musicians, actors, models, and dancers, as well as any survivors who are now ambassadors for the cause to share with our audience their lives and the impact they have made. Our show runs twice a month, and if you would like to be a guest on our show, email us at USATexas@gmail.com. That is Ms. as in MS, USA, and then Texas, TEXAS at Gmail, or you can message us on our Facebook, which is also at MSUS USA, Texas. So you have all that. So we'll share all of that also in the links so that you have that because I know that was a lot that I shared. But thank you all for being here. And thank you, Lally, for being here this morning as well. I do have a bio, so feel free to elaborate on it once, but I want to make sure that I give proper due to all of your experience. And so today, everyone, we have Dali Rivera. She is the creator of the Anti-Bullying and Diversity Academy. She's also the owner of Dali Talks. Here, she's also able to provide a series of online mini courses and in-person workshops for parents, guardians, and educators. She is also a U.S. Army veteran, so really thank her for her service and being able to serve our country. She is a speaker. She is a parent of two beautiful children. She is a wife of a disabled veteran, so we also thank him for his service. She has earned her master's degree in Women and Gender Studies from Towson University in Towson, Maryland. And her passion to eliminate bullying comes from her own personal experience. So we definitely want to delve into that and what allowed you to do this impressive and admirable work. So Dali, tell us about yourself.
Oh, Melissa, that was so pretty the way you said everything. Thank you so much for having me here on the show. Yeah, so I created the Diversity and Anti-Bullying Academy due to a need that I saw, but also because of personal experience. I was bullied as a child, and then my baby was bullied when she started school. So the mama bear came out, and I just wanted to do research and educate other parents and the schools too, because schools kind of need to see the other side, right? The parent side and of what we want. So that's a little bit of what I do, and that's it.
Wonderful. Well, I'm definitely glad and I appreciate that you did all of that. And so I know the main part that we wanted to highlight is that because this is due to personal experience, could you start off by telling us a bit more about your experience and what, ignited the passion in bullying because of maybe any in involvement you had with it yourself?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So I migrated from Nicaragua at the age of 7 to the US. I went to California and I was raised there. So I remember my first recollections of going to school, and it was really, really scary because I didn't know a single word of English. And I remember on the train ride through, I don't know what country, my mom was like, "You have to learn English." And I was like, okay. Um, and she started with the numbers, and I remember knowing like 1 through like maybe 7. I didn't even know 1 through 10. So I get to the US and I thought everything was going to be cool. I was this vibrant, happy, very smart kid. I had skipped grades already in Nicaragua. And then I came to the United States, and just solely because of my age, they knocked me down 1 grade. And I felt very offended because I was like, wait, but I'm very smart. Like I got skipped a grade and I'm advanced. These kids are behind on on their math and stuff. But I guess they did that partially because here they try to keep kids of the same age in the same grade. And also because my Spanish, my English was not there. I didn't know any English at all. And I remember sitting in class and I heard the teacher say something. And then all of a sudden, all of the little kids in the classroom took a white paper that was in front of them and they folded it in three. And then they started writing something on there. So I was looking around, trying to guide myself, and I was trying to copy what they were doing. And as it turned out later, I found out because they were laughing at me and stuff afterwards. I found out that she had asked them to write everybody's name on that piece of paper. So it was a trifold, so that it stands on the desk. And I felt so ashamed because I'm like, I'm smarter than this. I know this. And I just didn't know what she was saying. And nobody helped me. There was not one person that said, hey, this is what you have to do. They didn't explain it in Spanish. And in the at recess, it was just horrible. Like kids who spoke Spanish, they bullied me because at first it starts with teasing and then it just got to like always getting bullied about the way I dressed, the way I spoke. My Spanish and the dialect was not acceptable because the majority of people spoke a different dialect, mostly a Mexican based dialect. And I think people don't understand that Spanish is not a Spanish is not a monologous. Okay, I'm going to skip that. You can cut that out.
Yeah.
Spanish is not spoken the same everywhere in Latin America or in Spain or here in the United States. Just like here in the United States, you don't speak English in the West Coast the way you do in Louisiana or in New York or in Indiana. There are different dialects, and so that became my childhood at school, and then it got physical. So it was and then there was name calling, a lot of racial slurs and things like that, simply because I just was misunderstood. I didn't dress the same, I didn't look the same. I was just that weird foreign kid, and that really shattered the little excited human being that I was. And I became very just wanting to be ignored or invisible at all times, because that was like my idea was, if they can't see me, if they don't notice me, they'll leave me alone. And I was like that for the most part. And then at home, things became very, very rough. My father was very abusive to my mother, and then he was somewhat abusive to us too. And so I was already dealing with all this crap at home. And then I'd come home and get more crap from all the other kids. And of course, nobody knew what was going on. So your confidence it just, it's not there, So I grew up thinking I just wasn't smart enough, and I wasn't, because I felt like I was already behind because of the English, and I had to catch up. And that yeah, it was hard, and I think that I did not really gain my confidence until I was in the army. And that's a whole nother story too, because I went through some stuff there too. But that's where I was kind of forced to face the people who bullied me, and in a very tactical, respectful way, I stood my ground. And although inside I was shaking, nervous, wanted to cry from the fear, I did it. But it's really, really hard. And I just kept thinking, wow, I'm in my 20s, I'm in the freaking military. And here I am, petrified to stand up for myself. Why didn't I do this earlier? And then we can fast track to when I became a mom and my baby was starting elementary school. And she had met this little boy, and they got along pretty well. He was from the neighborhood. He was 5 as well as my daughter. So he asked her to be his girlfriend, and she said no. So he was cool with it, but then a few days later, especially closer to school starting again, his brother started bugging him about it. they started mentioning, oh, you got turned down by her, and the brothers were 7 and 9, so they're a little older. And when my husband and I would walk her to the bus stop, we started noticing that every day they would do something aggressive to the little boy. They would say things like, you got to man up. You got to be tough. You got to be aggressive. Show them, you the man, you're the man. And there were moments where they would grab his arms, this 5-year-old's arms, and hold the arms behind him while the other brother would punch him and tell him, you got to man up. You got to do this. You got to do that. And we realized, man, they are really bullying him and he doesn't like it. And he acts like a little jerk sometimes because he's tired and he feels like he has to comply with what his brothers are teaching him. In one of those instances, um, I got to really get a deep connection with that little boy when this was happening to him. I remember he was saying like, stop it, trying to like tell him to stop, but trying not to sound like a quote unquote wuss about what was going on. And my eyes locked with his for like a split second that felt like time had stopped. And I looked into his little eyes and I could see for the first time that he was actually holding back tears. And that shocked me because the whole time, every day that we would see this, it didn't seem like it phased him that much. But when I actually looked into this little boy, it was like I was looking into his soul. And I could see the holding back, that he was angry, he was humiliated, he was ashamed, he was hurt, he was very sad, and he wanted to cry and he was holding back. And of course, my husband and I would always stop what was going on when we'd see it. But at that moment is when I understood that this little boy who had been kicking and sometimes trying to punch my daughter and other kids, the reason he was doing that was because he was being taught that the idea of masculinity was to be aggressive and violent. And in the women and gender studies field, we call that toxic masculinity, which is something that now I think it's almost become a politicized word. And that's a problem because it takes away from the real work that needs to be done in order to stop not just like men hurting themselves or not allowing themselves to feel their emotions and be more nurturing and caring without feeling any shame. But it does a disservice to every gender because we need to identify when we have these negative perceptions, these stereotypes. And so, as I was evaluating what was going on, the master person, the researcher in me, was thinking, how can I fix this? How can I educate kids that toxic masculinity is not that is not real manhood? And my husband was like, don't talk to people about it, about toxic masculinity. They're gonna run the other way. You have to go at it at a different angle, because you have the stereotypes that these kids are believing, and they're being used to justify bullying. They feel entitled to be able to do this because of whatever reason. And that's why I started the Diversity and Anti-Bullying Academy. Not directly there, though. I actually just started doing all of the research. And my concentration in my degree is social policy and leadership. So in social policy, what you do is pretty much you study policies that the government creates, and then you read it thoroughly and you try to identify who it's supposed to serve, and then you do the research and find out, is it working? So if it's not working, you don't necessarily throw that policy out. You can fix it sometimes, but sometimes you do have to throw it out. And while I don't do that part, what I did was that I took that knowledge that I had on how to research social policies, and I started looking at the policies at the school. And I realized, okay, they have some really good stuff, but where they're lacking is that they're not educating the parents on how to properly advocate for their children. They're also, of course, they're a school, so they're not going to speak to parents about stereotypes, or their children about stereotypes and toxic masculinity or anything like that. So I just started putting stuff together to teach parents on how to advocate for their children, and how to make sure that their children are not the bully, and how to help the bully, because this is a common thing in, well, not just in America, throughout the world. But through my research and focus groups that I created, what I found out is, number one, that parents don't truly understand the definition of bullying, and teachers too. Sometimes, I mean, they're getting way better, especially because of legalities and stuff like that. So many schools have been sued. So that's been one. The other one has been that, oh, I forgot. Wait, what was it? What did I just say? Oh,
You started off with the definition of bullying,
yeah,
if
the
you want.
definition. Yeah. Number two is that the parents don't know the policy about bullying incident reports. Wait, let me say that again. Number two is that parents are unaware of the policies at schools that protect their kids against bullying, or the proper reporting methods. A lot of parents believe that the proper reporting method, the official one, is just to go and tell a teacher. And it's actually not, it's more than that. And number three, there is a gap of knowledge between the child and the parent, because at school the kids are getting some of the information, not in depth, but some. And the schools don't necessarily use the words bullying and education. They say, the golden rule, or they mask it with something else. And I understand why. It's to soften it up, because when you talk to a kid's like, when you speak to a kid and say, hey, let's talk about bullying, they're like, ugh, and they roll their eyes and they're like, okay, whatever, you know? so so I implemented all of these things, so that to create a bridge between the school and the parents, because you can educate a kid all day long, but if the parent has no idea on what's going on and how to fix a problem, then there's going to be a gap, and the children are not going to feel very confident going to mom and dad and saying, hey, this is happening to me. And the other thing too is, especially when you have a parent that says, don't you come back here with your butt whooped, I'm going to whoop your butt if you let somebody do that to you. Then that's a deterrent. So now the child is going to say, well, I don't want to tell my mom or dad because I'm going to get my butt whooped, and I just got my butt whooped by this kid. Double jeopardy. It's not fair. And I understand that comes from the idea of, hey, stand your ground, defend yourself. But when you say it like that, you're doing more harm than good. And the other thing too is that kids sometimes, when they tell the parents, they just want to be heard and supported. And sometimes kids say, oh no, I'm not going to tell my mom or my dad because they're going to go and hurt this person, and I don't want my parents to go to jail. I mean, I've had kids that literally tell me that. They're like, I'll ask them, like, have you told your parents about this? Oh no. We're like, why not? Well, my dad will go to jail because he'll really hurt somebody. So you have to be careful what you're saying to your kids. I know that it comes from a place of love and protection, but you gotta make sure that it's in a healthy way so that they don't run the opposite direction. Because as a parent, your job is to defend them and make sure that they're safe, make sure that they're loved and heard and validated. Which brings me to another point. Sometimes adults really don't believe in bullying. So when a child says, I'm being bullied, they hear negative responses such as, you're just soft, or you just don't know how to defend yourself, or what did you do to piss them off? That is like the most hurtful things a kid can say, because it is their experience and it is about the receiver. It's not about what you perceive, because you're not living in those shoes. You're not living in that experience. So if that child has a true fear, angst, or worry, or like physical reactions sometimes even, then listen to them. To you, the problem might be minimal, but to them, that is their world, and they have every right to feel that way. What kids usually want is just to be validated, to be heard, and for somebody to say, I'm here for you. I can help you. How can I help you? So always ask the child, how can I help? Because sometimes our children know best. Some parents don't listen to that. They're like, how can my child know best? think about it. They go to school and they engage with these kids, even with that bully, right? With that child that's hurting them. And sometimes they know that if you take approach A, that might flare up the problem. And that's, I think, one of the main concerns that I hear children. They're like, I'm scared that it's going to get worse. They always say the schools don't care because to them, they think they're reporting it correctly. But the problem is that they are not properly reporting it. So when an adult hears it, they're just hearing a complaint about some social issue. They're not hearing a complaint about actually being harmed. So I'll give you an example. Say that little Dali goes up to her teacher and she says, teacher, Melissa or Lisa, they've been very mean to me. And so the teacher's going to ask why or how. And so Dali's going to say, well, they're being mean to me. They're not letting me play with them. Every time I ask to play with them, they don't want to play with me. So the teacher is going to think, well, they have every right to not want to play with this child. You can't force them. But then let's explore what else is going on behind that. Social bullying is one of the ways that bullying happens, and it's taken not as serious as physical bullying because it's not right in your face. It doesn't leave the bruise, it doesn't leave the obvious marks, right? But let's go back and explore what happened to little Dali. Every time that she wants to go play with Melissa and Lisa, Melissa and Lisa have agreed that they're not going to play with Dali because they don't like the way she dresses. And they've also told other kids to not play with her because she's the weird kid. So every time that Dali goes outside for PE with them, they have to choose teams. And Dali's always the last kid standing because it's been agreed that Dali's not worth playing with because she's not good enough. And then every time you have teams inside the classroom, nobody wants to team up with Dali. And this is a recurring theme. So every time Dali tries to engage with her community, she's excluded. That is social bullying. It is when you remove the community from that person and either their friends, it can be classmates, it can be your own family even. So to the teacher it just looks like they don't want to play with her, but this has been going on for a while now. So what is that doing to that child? That child is believing nobody likes me, I'm not good enough, nobody believes that I can be a good teammate. So what does that do to your psyche? I mean, you start playing small, you start allowing people to do certain things to you because you're now used to it. It's become a norm. And sometimes you don't even realize that you're doing that. And it's dangerous to not educate children about bullying because that intersects into so many other types of abuse. And Melissa, you and I have spoken about that, right? Like you can be exploited in any way, either financially, physically, sexually, your labor, your knowledge, everything. You become more vulnerable. So people who see that you're in need of love and attention, they can take advantage of that and they can do whatever they want because the moment that child feels an inkling of good nature or of acts of good nature, let me say that again. Because the moment that a child receives an inkling of good behavior towards them, then they think, oh, this person likes me or this person loves me, especially if they're seeking a romantic relationship. And the bar has become so low that now they'll just accept any good acts. I mean, something that might be normal to you and me, like, oh, this boy always opens the door for me, or oh, this girl's always sharing her pencil with me. So, or it could be somebody older, like, oh, this Mr. So and so always compliments my clothes. So you don't want your child to feel so low about themselves that any little compliment is going to make them think, oh, this person is truly genuine. Sometimes it's just etiquette. Sometimes people just, you compliment people. because you like something about them doesn't mean that you're in love with them or anything like that. It doesn't mean that it's not anything more than that. So I've spoken a lot. So do you have
And I
any?
appreciate you definitely shared some great experiences, and what I appreciate about you sharing, and thank you so much for doing so, is that you gave us a perspective as a individual, so like as you were a child growing up, but then you also shared how it evolved as a parent as well, and so how your experiences were had changed, but also were still, you had those memories from how it felt like when you had it happen to you, and then how you felt as a parent as well. And I know we might have some viewers who are parents, and so, and Nadia and myself, we both are parents as well. So we definitely, share that sentiment of like how it changes and your passion really gets ignited, essentially. I also appreciate how that led to you wanting to get more research. And so that's why you got your degree in that as well. And so you kind of were able to have that, more diverse perspective, and really an informed one at that, because you were able to have all of that. I think also an interesting thing that you pointed out was that teachers are doing better. So this is an opportunity for, it's interesting to say, teachers getting educated. So, but it is true. It doesn't mean that because you're a teacher that you can't still receive some kind of education, because you are helping our youth, you're helping our next generation. So any kind of tips that are there for them, is only to benefit and provide that more well-rounded education. And so you said that they're doing a good job, but they could do a bit better, especially in regards to the definition of bullying. And so what I wanted to go back to was that I heard you mention the term teasing, and then you said it evolves to bullying, but you did not say that they were synonymous. So you didn't say that teasing was the same thing. So could you tell us why and give us that definition of bullying?
Thank you. That's such a good question because, like I said before, a lot of people, even adults, don't truly understand the definition of it. The word bullying gets thrown around if they slap that label on anybody. So, bullying is really the um, unwanted actions or behavior against you, and that includes, like pushing and uh, tarnishing your name. Hold on, let me re-say this again because I'm not seeing it right. um okay, so bullying is the unwanted aggressive behaviors against somebody, and that includes things that are not very obvious, like I mentioned before, like the punching and hitting and all, but also uh, the way that you're treated, like with microaggressions. So you have actually, there's several types of bullying, and I'm going to go over four of them. So you have verbal bullying, which is the very obvious, like, oh, you're stupid, or what, who do you think you are? The belittling and the insults. It also involves microaggressions like backhanded compliments, speaking to someone with a lot of condensation in the voice, being condescending, and also being just very passive aggressive. So if a child is in the classroom and their teacher, let's say, or another adult in the classroom, or another child is super passive aggressive, every time that they raise their hand, they're uh, pretending like they don't see them. That's um, oh, I'm sorry, I'm giving the wrong example. Oh my gosh, what is wrong with me today? Okay. So for example, if you're in the classroom and your child is a slow reader, and the teacher calls on your child and they say, okay, so and so is going to read now. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, again, here we go. So and that happens all the time, right? Because bullying is also very consistent. So it happens more than once. And usually it involves leaving the receiver with negative feelings. It is also ill intended. It's purposely done to hurt someone, whether emotionally, mentally, verbally, or physically. And so imagine that this child, every time that they're about to read, they already have, say, a challenge reading, and they hear this, and kids are saying like, "Oh, there we go again," or "This, you're just stupid," or "You're slow." That's verbal bullying. And say somebody says something like, well, you're not the sharpest tool in the shed, are you? So, I mean, we're going to skip over you and go to somebody else. That's verbal bullying. So it doesn't have to be you're a B word or you're F, or you're all of the stuff, that the horrible, nasty stuff that we hear. But that other little microaggressions, those little comments can be just as hurtful because you're telling somebody they're not good enough. So that's verbal bullying. And then you have social bullying, which I explained, of little Dali being excluded from her community. The purpose is to isolate that person. And that usually also includes spreading rumors, tarnishing that person's name, their reputation. And any type of bullying, it doesn't necessarily have to be like only this type of bullying happen. It can be a combination of all. The other type of bullying is cyberbullying. And that usually involves everything that you usually do in person to somebody, but you do it behind a screen, whether it's a laptop, a smartphone, a gaming system. And I want people to understand that there is a difference in how boys and girls usually engage in bullying. There's a big difference. So boys, because they hang out more on gaming systems, it happens on gaming systems because they all have chat features. Even if you think that it doesn't, it does. Like every game has it. There's a way around it if it's blocked. And then for girls, it's usually via social media because that's where girls mostly hang out at and that's where they feel more comfortable. Also, I want people to understand that cyberbullying doesn't necessarily mean that they are online. They can actually just use a device, record something, or take a picture and then pass it around without texting it, emailing it, or posting it anywhere, and sharing it to humiliate somebody. And cyberbullying, I mean, we can go into more in depth with that, but there's, also like the revenge nude pictures, especially when they're couples like teens. They sometimes get a little risky and send pictures to their boyfriends or girlfriends. So then after a breakup, they might not post those pictures, although some do, to cause harm, but sometimes just sharing it from their device and say, hey, look, that is a form of cyberbullying too. And then, of course, physical bullying. And physical bullying includes the damaging of your property, not just your body. So, your books, your book bag, your car, like slashing tires or breaking windows or ripping parts of your clothes or stealing your lunchbox or your money. And then there's other types of bullying, but we're not going to go into it because we'll be here forever. But it's so important for parents to know at least these four. And then teasing is very different because when teasing is done, it's usually done by people that you know and you are friends with. And usually what they say, even when it might sound bad, it doesn't come with the intention of hurting, whereas bullying does. And when you're being bullied, it's usually by people that you don't really associate with. They might be a classmate that you know really well, but they're not your friend. So that's another thing I teach. Teach your kids the difference between an acquaintance and a friend. Because kids sometimes don't report because they say, but that's my friend. And it's just a kid in the classroom they don't hang out with. And so for children to understand what the difference is, ask them, like, who would you invite to your birthday party? And the one person that you think you would invite to your birthday party and invite them into your private life, that's most likely your friend. So when you're being teased, you invite your friends and they're allowed to tease you because it's meant for just good fun. And the other thing that happens is that it's not always you getting the brunt of it. Everybody shares a little bit, like today my sisters might tease me about that one time that I fell coming down the stairs at church. And then I might remind my brother about that one time he went head down the slide into the pool and broke his or chipped his tooth and make fun of him about that, and then my other sister might chime in about that one time that she laughed so hard that she farted in front of her boyfriend, and like everybody will laugh at that, but it's not to humiliate and to make her feel bad about herself. And those are the very two distinct like ways that you can explain to children. Like bullying, it's very intentional. It's always happening to you by this person or by this group of people. And you're always the target. And teasing, it feels more like fun and everybody laughs at one another. It's not just at one person.
Absolutely. Thank you so, so much for sharing all of that and making that clear distinction, because definitely makes it more clear in my mind as well. Because as you've mentioned, I definitely see intersections with other types of violence, like you've said, but I definitely think I see how it distinctly how bullying also is different. And so it definitely requires its own separate attention. And I can definitely see why you have your mini courses, which we all should definitely, I encourage you all to take part in those, because I can see how each one of those you can delve deeper into them,
Yes.
and speak more about them and make those clear. But I think an interesting thing that you mentioned was intention versus impact. So it's definitely how that's why it's different. The teasing can be lighthearted. The teasing can, doesn't necessarily make you feel bad in the end, and that you should trust your feelings as a result. So I think that that was also a great thing that you mentioned, because I agree with you that children do have a lot of wisdom. We don't always give them the credit. And so I agree with you that, our society is kind of built up that way. Like, they're kids, they don't know, we'll help them out. And so, but I appreciate that you said that we can actually empower them and actually elevate their voice and make sure that we're listening to them first and then addressing their needs also as a result. So I definitely appreciate that. I think too, you mentioned how, because there are bullies and because they exist, that there is a lot of danger with what can happen and like the behaviors that they do exhibit. And so what I would like you to also delve into a little bit more too is that, so like, what is the, impact that can happen with this bullying? Why is it so important to have these conversations about it? And what can you tell us more about that?
That's another great question. Uh, so yeah, when you have a child that is constantly being bullied and they never report it or get help, what happens is that the person starts, like I said before, playing small because they start believing that they're not worth anything or that they're not worth standing up for, especially because a lot of kids, they are scared to stand up for somebody because their first thought is, well, I might be next. So, um, it just allows for that person to be one of the statistics in the United States. Before COVID, 150,000 children would miss school only because they were avoiding a bully. So imagine your child is missing school every day or a few times a week, and what happens is that you go back to school and you try to catch up. And if you have, like me, this is something that happened to me. I struggled with math because I was dealing with some home stuff. I was very good, and then something happened, and then I just couldn't focus. And then I was being bullied. So I started pretending like I didn't feel well. And my mom and dad, they were like, okay, that's fine. You can stay home. So I would go back to school, and they had moved on, of course, especially with math, it's like something that you build on. So you got to go back and learn what you missed in order to learn what they're currently teaching. So then it took me so long to grasp it. And then I lost my confidence in the one thing that I was so proud of. And because of that, I didn't just have to catch up on math. Then we had English, and we were reading a book, and I was behind in the book. So then I couldn't catch up, and I couldn't get good grades on my tests because I hadn't done the work. And so it all snowballs. And then you start thinking, well, maybe I'm not good enough for college. So then you start taking the lesser challenging classes. And then because of that, you might not do so well, and you not might not be so attractive to the colleges. So then you avoid either going to college at all, or you just go to a college you wouldn't have gone to had you just, kept at it. And all because you believe that you're not smart enough or good enough. But this doesn't affect just academics. This affects the people you hang around with. So if I'm being treated badly all the time, then I'm going to probably choose people who I now think are of the same quality that I am. So if I think that I'm not good enough, I'm going to, be hanging out with kids who also don't think they're good enough or smart enough. And when you have that commonality with another child that thinks little of themselves, then you think it's not just me, it's normal. And so that's who you're going to attract. And those people sometimes do things that you don't do, like hurt themselves, or they allow others to hurt them. And this is becoming your norm. So maybe the quality of relationships is now lower. Maybe now, like I said before, you allow people to mistreat you in other ways not just verbally. Maybe it's you know they allow to use you as an excuse for doing something that they shouldn't, or um, maybe you allow them to push you around, and then from pushing around it becomes hitting, and then it just gets bigger and bigger from there. So in a bigger scope, when somebody is bullied, which is being bullied is really another form of harassment. The word is just related to children doing it. But if you look at the definition, if you look it up, it's very similar to sexual harassment or harassment. It's unwanted. It comes, from, it's consistent, and it comes in different ways. So imagine this child has been dealing with this over the years. They're now not going to college or going to take the easy classes. They're also going to cut themselves short and not apply for those big jobs that they used to dream about. So if it affects their financial life as an adult and their potential to do what they truly wanted in life. So now, from having been this amazing dreamer of a child, you have almost no dream at all. You'll just settle for whatever. And when you settle for whatever job, then you're most likely going to allow other people at work to take advantage of you too. So you're seeing the big picture. It can be so devastating. And now for the bully, the person who commits these bullying actions, they're labeled, they're stigmatized. They are most likely to, if no intervention is ever done, they're most likely to have gone to jail or be part of the juvenile system at least 3 times by the time they're like 21. And these people, if they're never stopped, if nobody ever stands up to them and says, hey, you're wrong, stop treating me like this, they're probably going to be that person doing that to somebody in the workforce. So you got to help the bully too. You got to understand that bullies hurt others because somebody's probably hurting them. And or maybe because to them it's just a normal way of life because they're experiencing this at home, or because that's what they grew up watching somewhere and nobody's corrected them. So you have to help both. It's so important. You can't just let it go, because imagine they hurt you today and then years later they can end up hurting even one of your family members, maybe a little niece or nephew that ends up being, say, their student, because that happens too. Teachers sometimes bully, sometimes they know about it, and sometimes they do.
Absolutely. And so thank you so very much for delving into that, because I think that that really brings it on home as to why this is why it's important, because it definitely exists. And so rather than us making it seem like it doesn't happen, or that because it's something difficult to talk about, like maybe we shouldn't give as much attention to it, you know what I mean? Or let someone else handle it,
Yeah.
or just let the teachers do it on their own, and just we don't have to have the conversations at home as well. But no, I mean, in some way, even if we're not parents, we come into contact with other individuals who either might be getting bullying or might be doing the bullying.
Mhm.
So there are opportunities for us to step in, whether that's, intercepting with the bully themselves, or being able to help that child and being able to be an advocate for them and some kind of support. So I think that was like amazing. I'm just so glad that you shed a light. And I also love how you said that, so this is part of the bigger picture. Like there is a bigger issue with this. And so even though we might see it as something trivial, the individual side, because yes, I've seen many, students argue, and they do it all the time, and oh look, maybe they're just, let's having some kind of conflict, they'll figure it out, but we're not realizing how that can lead to something greater later on. And so I think it's great that and I think it's such a great segue into the fact that there is hope, though. So even though you're hearing all of this, you now heard all of these dangers. However, how can we help you? How can we figure out a way to provide these important conversations and to build that bridge that you so eloquently talked about? And so, Dali, if you could, I would love for you. I know, like you said, each one of them are their own workshops, which is why you have your mini courses. So maybe you don't have to necessarily delve into each one, but definitely let us know what are the topics that you cover. How can individuals get a part of that? Because we definitely want to make sure that viewers know more about that.
Oh, thank you for asking that. Yeah, I have a ton of topics because, like you saw or like you heard, there's a lot to talk about. It's not just about this is what bullying is, so I teach effective reporting methods, the sticks and stones of social bullying. So I give way more examples. And for every mini course, I provide the parents with activity sheets that they can use with their children, but also because a lot of my students are teachers as well, so they can print this out, they can use it in the classroom and share it. But other topics that have like eliminate thinking about others, that unconscious bias, those unconscious stereotypes that we believe in. And I have another one called I didn't know I was bullied, because some kids really don't know. They think that their behavior is normal until somebody tells them, hey, cut it out. Also, like helping victims of bullying move forward, because there are so many resources. And what I want to say about that is, regardless of what happened, tell your child that you're there for them. Tell them that they are loved, even when the child was the one who committed those bullying actions. Tell them, I love you. This does not define who you are, because you don't want to be adding to that stigma to this child if they've hurt somebody. And to the person who was victimized, encourage them to not buy into the victimhood idea. Encourage them to say, hey, you went through that, let's overcome it, or I'll help you overcome it and move forward, instead of just living in that past. Because I think that the majority of times when kids, adults who were bullied in the past, they kind of lived in that space for so long, allowing that bully to take rent of their energy, like they're taking rent in their mind, in their memories. And it's better to say, okay, this is what I learned from this. And I know I'm not trying to downplay anybody's experience, because some are really, really rough. But yeah, and number one is like, educate yourself as a parent, a teacher, an adult who is in charge of children. Educate yourself. And I have the diversity and anti-bullying academy courses available at dalitalks.com. I'm also on Instagram, same handle, Dali Talks. And I have a free webinar called Bullying Prevention 101 coming up April 3rd. So if you go to dalitalks.com, you'll see the subscription box, the registration box in there. Just register. If you happen to miss it, you're going to get the replay. But let's get educated, because once you educate yourself, then you'll start understanding more, and you'll be able to explain things to your children so that you can have these conversations with them.
Thought I had unmuted. So absolutely, but yes, I'm definitely glad that you shared that. Also, because and I want to reiterate the importance of registering for those important webinars, because even though you might be able to get that replay later, it's always better to be there and be able to ask questions. And so if you have further questions, Dali is giving you this wonderful opportunity to be able to ask them in real time. And so be able to say that, especially if there's something there. And even now, if anything, any of this is resonating with you and you want to have further conversations about it, you are absolutely welcome. And so now you have this wealth of knowledge that is here with Dali, and I definitely think it's an incredible resource. But definitely, I'm so glad that you provide all of these great things, and I'm glad you share that with all of us, because it's definitely great. And I definitely think it allows individuals to delve deeper in a great way, and then walk away feeling much more confident to be able to handle these conversations, because they'll have all of these other great tips. And so I'm glad that you shared that. And before we officially end, because of course the time always goes by too fast, is there any other tips and things that you want to mention? Any other encouraging messages? Just because it's been a pleasure having you.
Yeah, just whatever you do, make sure that you are informing your child and having real conversations with them. I mean, take 15 minutes of just real conversation, not did you wash the dishes or did you clean your room, but like, hey, how was your day? And if you have a problem getting info out of them, try this. Ask them, what were your most, uh, ask them, what were your 3 favorite things about today? And then ask them, what was your 3 least favorite things about your day? And then ask them, if you could change one thing about today, what would it be? And you'll be surprised how much more kids will come out and start talking with you, because the important thing is that you want them to feel comfortable to share anything with you.
Absolutely. And that's great. And that's something that I feel like I can even take back as well and use. And it's something such an easy way to at least start it, but definitely can leave a positive impact and just feel that, those who are being asked can also feel validated in that chance. So thank you so very much, Dali, for all the information you shared, for being with us, for giving us your time. And I only hope, like I said, and encourage everyone who's out there listening that if you want to be able to connect further, Dali gave you another great, there's a lot of variety of resources and opportunities and ways and avenues for being able to contact her. Could you let us know one more time those handles and how we can find you?
Yeah, my handle anywhere on social media is at Dali Talks. So that's D as in David, ALI, T as in Tom, ALKS as in Sierra. And my website is dalitalks.com.
Awesome. So thank you so very much. And thank you to everyone that watched us today. And any other further questions, we welcome them, but also we will provide links for you to be able to connect with us further. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.